So we're going to look at notes on dividing integers. And a quick review would be that we've looked at how we add and subtract positive and negative numbers or integers. And we learned in our last lesson that that is different than multiplying. Multiplying rules are different than our adding and subtracting of positive and negative numbers. So let's review our multiplying rules. We learned that when we multiply, and we have an example out to the side, 3 times 2, we get 6. It's a positive. 3 times 1, we get 3. 3 times 0 is 0. 3 times negative 1 is a negative 3. And 3 times negative 2 is a negative 6. So we learned that same signs mean it's going to be a positive answer, and different signs mean it is going to be a negative answer. So I want us to think about these, and I want us to think and review what fact families are, because I think that's going to help you figure out the rules for when we divide positive and negative numbers. Let's take the 3 times 2 equals 6. So you told me, and we know that 3 times 2 equals 6. And we know because of the commutative property of multiplication, 2 times 3 equals 6. But we also know to complete our fact family here, the opposite operation of multiplication would be to divide. And we could take our 6 divided by 3, and we could get a 2. But we could also take our 6 divided by 2 and get a 3. So we do get a positive times a positive was a positive. But we also know that if we have a positive answer and we divide by a positive, we still get a positive. So our multiply and divide rules so far are still going to be true. They're going to be the same. Let's take a look at one of the negative examples. So if I had 3 times a negative 2 equals a negative 6, we know because of the commutative property, we could do negative 2 times a positive 3 equals a negative 6. Now let's look at the dividing. Let's write out the fact families. A negative 6 divided by a positive 3 equals a negative 2. So what do we notice? We notice we have different signs. We have a negative divided by a positive. Different signs is a negative answer. And let's look at the other way of dividing, my other fact family that goes with this. Negative 6 divided by a negative 2, so same signs, and that gives me the positive 3. So fact families is proving to us that our multiplication and our division rules are going to be the same when we are multiplying and dividing positive and negative numbers. So we already had practice with multiply. Now we're just going to divide, but our rules are the same. Let's go ahead and the triad. The triad is on page 53. And again, I would like for you to look at these, and before we even say what the answer is, let's see if we can identify if my answer will be positive or negative. So letter A, we have a negative, and I want you to know that a division can be represented with a fraction bar. So a lot of times we'll see division as a fraction bar. We need to know that the fraction bar means to divide. So we have a negative divided by a negative. So my answer is going to be, they are the same sign. It is going to be a positive answer. And a 40 divided by 5 is going to be a positive 8. Let's look at B, where it says a positive divided by a negative. These are different signs. One is positive, one is negative. Different, so I'm going to have a negative answer. So this would be an example of a -8. And then part C, they just try to throw you, I think. 0 divided by anything, I don't care if it's positive, negative, but a 0 in the numerator divided by a value is going to be just 0. So let's look at one more example. I'm going to look at example 3, which is on page 53 as well, right below this try it. I really want us to see the way that they have represented these negative symbols for these problems. Okay, so it's asking, are the following quotients equivalent, and justify your answer. And of course they gave you some ugly numbers, but that's not what I'm looking at. What I really want to look at, not very pretty fractions. What I really want to look at is these 3 right here. And this is something that you need to memorize. That I can have a negative in front of my grouping symbol, and that means my answer is negative. I could have a negative in the denominator, my -18 right here. That was kind of sloppy. I could have a negative in my numerator, which is my -18, divide by a positive. Remember, opposite signs, a negative and a positive is going to give you a negative answer. Or, last but not least, I could have the negative in my denominator. So my 18 is positive, my 4 is negative, still opposite signs, still a negative answer. So when we start to look at these problems and we're trying to determine if they're positive or negative, I want us to know that the 3 ways that they wrote that problem out gives you the exact same answer. They're equivalent, equal. All of those look different to our eyes, but they're the same value. You might want to highlight the box over to the side that shows this rule. And now what they're asking us is to look at the try it. Which of the following are equal to -5? Well, let's just go through and look at first, identify if it's going to be a positive or a negative. So, a positive divided by a positive, same sign. So that means this is positive. A negative outside the parentheses really means opposite signs, the whole value is negative. Number 3 here. Negative divided by a positive, opposite signs means the value is negative. -55 divided by a negative, same sign, both are negative, means it's going to be positive. Positive divided by a negative, opposite signs, means it is going to be negative. And the very last one, let's just look at inside the parentheses. A negative divided by a negative, we know is a positive. So we could rewrite this as this problem right here. All I did was took my negative divided by a negative. I know that's a positive, so those negative symbols can cancel out. I still have my negative outside the parentheses. I only dealt with inside the parentheses. And so this answer would also be negative. So if we circle the ones that are going to give us a -5, it is the 4 that we labeled negative. So to summarize, Adding and subtracting are different than multiplying and dividing when we have positive and negatives. But multiplying and dividing positive and negative numbers, the rules are the same for both. That's it. Have a great day.